Do you think there's enough of us now, with the light that's coming into the planet and the many people going through spiritual change, becoming more connected to nature and the rest of humanity, to do some, to transcend some of the major issues like the cutting of the rainforests, the issue about CO2, and do you think we can turn it around and actually, do you think we can take the CO2 out of the atmosphere?
An interesting question. Is it possible?
Is it possible?
The question is it possible to
stop the water?
To stop all this destructive patterns that we see in the world today from really happening.
Yeah.
If you don't believe it's possible, it's not possible. And I think the news has a lot to answer for the skepticism that we feel as human beings in the world today. And if the news was to portray some of the more positive aspects that are going on in the world today, and there are so many, rather than just the incomplete picture of destruction, then I think this would make things more possible. I think people lose faith and lose hope that anything is possible when day after day all that is portrayed is that we're reaching a point of no return, we're reaching a point where things are getting just so out of hand that, why bother even try in the first place? It's a pity, because for me the concept of creating your reality is very important, and I believe that each individual can create much greater reality than they even realize. And some people think this is an esoteric sort of wonderful concept but has no relevance in today's practical everyday world. But any scientist who has studied quantum physics understands that one thought changes the experiment, and if you have a negative thought, it changes the outcome of whatever experiment that you're conducting. And this has been documented in many various wonderful ways. And so that can be applied also to our thoughts and our mind and what we think, and how we create that thinking to be part of what we discuss with our friends and what we communicate to the world, to the people we love, to the people we don't know, that we meet and just speak to. And if we change that reality to a belief system where it is possible, then it is possible. And I believe that that is happening. That I believe that there are so many people today. It's perhaps not so easy to see because they're everywhere. It's not a group of people that are in one country, but it's on all layers, in all layers of society. So from a few politicians to famous actors to people working in a post office to everyone who are already seeing this, what you call the light. It's not my concept, but what the light meaning the consciousness, the creative consciousness of the possibilities that are endless, how to change everything from not just thought to also to actual physical aspects of nature, and how to change that simply by getting the creative consciousness to be more actual in everyday communication and in everyday action. Everyday communication means your belief system, and everyday action means the way you approach the world. So your personality, your character, and how you do things. So I know actors, famous actors in Hollywood, for example, who are doing this silently, behind the scenes, but somehow infiltrating, and this sounds a little bit, whatever, but that through their creative work, so that it's not just another simple entertainment, but that it has a deeper message that somehow subliminally or even consciously works on people's consciousness, so that there is another perspective than the negative news and media and television that we have happening all around us. Is it possible to change the destruction of the ozone layer? I think it is. I think people are already doing this. There are already many people with more education and more awareness, many people understand that this is important, and a human being is naturally loving, naturally compassionate. So when that part of themselves is inspired to work and to believe that that work is possible, to work in some way to change the world, then that happens. Everyone does their little thing that they have to do, and all those little things are not just great, but they act in a way where it expands exponentially. So it's not just the accumulation of 3 or 4 people working. The 3 or 4 people transform to 25, and when 25 people work, it's 150. So even though the majority of people don't see or communicate that reality, the fact that there is now probably 10 or 15% of the population that are fairly aware and doing things in a very active way to change the world is not just 15%, it's much more. It's almost like 60% of the population is working to change the physical structures that are being destroyed around us, such as the ozone layer. So I feel that those scientific studies that people have in regards to, the ozone layer, being destroyed in 15 years if we don't change, don't take into account the subtle factors that are there, that are so subtle because they're human beings that are evolving as the situation changes. They don't take this into account, and this is what's going to change the whole structure of the destruction, so that it changes from destruction to a transformation where we see that destructive behavior can be a gateway to changing our whole culture and our whole concept of how to be living on this earth as a civilization. And I think scientists today are already in that space where they are creating technology that will work to sustain that new civilization.
Brilliant. So you were talking a little bit about quantum physics as well, the
Yes.
love of us.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask, what are the subtle things that influence what you were talking about?
The subtle things in what sense? Sorry.
You spoke about the subtle things that are not taken into account.
What I meant with the subtle things is, humanity's growth creatively, the exponential growth of 15%, being 50% of the population aware that changes need to happen, and they're actually acting out those changes. It's not just that they believe that those changes are necessary, but they're actually doing things. Like actors are acting in a different way, politicians are changing concepts in a subtle but, important way. Yeah? And, yeah, exactly.
For the sun. What is your vision for ourbbeautifulworld.org?
Wow, that's a vision that grows as it grows. So my vision is to start something, because I feel by starting a whole idea, it begins something like a domino effect. And once the concept is out there, people begin to understand that that concept is not just an idea, it's not just something that people think about and then it gets put aside and no one does anything about, but it's something that can be realized slowly. I don't have a dream as such that our beautiful world is going to save the world, but I have an idea that our beautiful world will create a consciousness